What if heaven and hell never existed? Imagine a simple question that slightly disturbs our calm. What if after we die, there is nothing? There is no eternal garden. There is no fire burning without end. There is no cosmic court weighing sins and rewards. There is no heaven. There is no hell. This question is not merely a theological question. It is a thought experiment that shakes something deeper. The reason why humans behave well, why we are afraid to commit evil, and why we believe that life has a moral direction. If it turns out that heaven and hell do not truly exist, then a bigger question arises. What has actually been regulating human behavior all this time? Assumptions we consider normal. Since childhood, many of us grow up with a simple moral narrative. This world is a stage of tests. If we live well, we will receive a reward at the end of the story, heaven. If we live badly, we will receive punishment, hell. This narrative is so intuitive that it feels like a law of nature. It provides a neat moral structure. Goodness equals receiving rewards. Evil equals receiving punishment. Life is a test. Death is judgment. For billions of people, this idea is not merely a metaphor. It is a cosmic map of justice. And indeed, that map feels satisfying because the real world is often unfair. Evil people sometimes live in prosperity. Good people sometimes suffer. Heaven and hell promise a final resolution to that injustice. But behind that sense of comfort lies a question we rarely ask. Has this concept always existed in human history? A shocking historical discovery. If we trace the history of human ideas, we find something surprising. The concept of heaven and hell did not always exist. In many ancient cultures, life after death was not described as a reward or a punishment. It was simply a vague continuation. In many ancient mythologies, all people, good or evil, went to the same underworld. A quiet, shadowy place, not a garden of happiness or a hell of torment. The concept of the afterlife as a moral system appeared much later in history. And that was not a coincidence. It appeared alongside something very specific in human history: large societies. When humans no longer knew each other. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived in small groups. A tribe consisted of around 50 to 150 people. In a group that small, morality did not require heaven or hell, because everyone knew each other. If someone stole food, everyone knew. If someone lied, their reputation was damaged. If someone was cruel, they could be ostracized. The punishment was social, direct, and real. But around 10,000 years ago, something changed. Humans began to build cities, then kingdoms, and then civilizations. Now you live side by side with millions of strangers. You do not know them, they do not know you. And suddenly, a new problem appeared in human history. How do you make people behave well when no one is watching? This is where the idea of cosmic surveillance appeared. The eye that never blinks. Imagine an extremely powerful concept. There is an entity that always sees you. It knows every thought, every action, every intention. There is no camera more advanced. There is no police force more effective. And most importantly, punishment cannot be avoided. Even if you escape human law, the concept of heaven and hell works like social technology. It creates what scientists call metaphysical surveillance. You might be able to lie to your neighbor. You might be able to deceive the state. But you cannot deceive the cosmic court. With this one simple idea, large societies can maintain moral stability without having to watch everyone at every moment. A small story in the market. Imagine an ancient market thousands of years ago. A merchant is weighing wheat for a customer. There are no cameras, there are no police. The seller could easily reduce the weight a little. The customer might not notice. But in his head there is a simple sentence: God sees. Suddenly, that small decision turns into a big moral decision. The merchant is not only facing the customer, he is facing eternity. This is the power of an idea. An idea that is unseen can change real behavior. A disturbing moral paradox. But this is where an interesting paradox emerges. If someone does good because they want to enter heaven, is that truly goodness or merely a cosmic transaction? Imagine two people giving charity. The first person gives because they want a reward. The second person gives because they cannot bear seeing the suffering of others. In terms of action, they are the same, but in terms of motivation, they are very different. This raises a philosophical question that has been debated for centuries. Does morality require rewards and punishments? Or does the purest morality actually emerge when there is no reward at all? If there is no heaven and hell. Now let us return to our initial thought experiment. Imagine there truly is no heaven and hell. There is no reward. There is no punishment after death. Would humans immediately turn into monsters? Interestingly, many modern psychology studies show something different. Humans actually possess an innate moral instinct. Babies who cannot even speak yet already show a preference for helpful behavior. Compared to harmful behavior, empathy is not the result of the threat of hell. It is part of human social biology. For hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, groups that cooperated had a greater chance of survival, compared to groups full of betrayal. Morality is not only a religious rule, it is a survival strategy of our species. A broader understanding. If we look at it from this perspective, the concept of heaven and hell becomes something very interesting. Not merely a theological doctrine, but also a cultural tool, a social technology, a system of moral motivation, a way humans manage large societies. It helps humans build civilizations with millions of people who do not know each other. But at the same time, it also opens a deeper question about the source of morality itself. Are we good because we are afraid of being punished? Or because we understand the suffering of others? Final reflection. Now imagine the initial question again. What if heaven and hell do not really exist? Perhaps the more interesting question is not about life after death, but about life before death. If there is no eternal reward, if there is no cosmic punishment, then every act of goodness we do becomes something far more radical. It is not done for heaven. It is done because we choose it. And perhaps that is where the greatest mystery about humans lies. That, on a small planet floating in the void, creatures who know that their lives are limited still choose to do good. Not because hell is waiting, not because heaven is promised, but because somehow being human means feeling that goodness itself is already meaningful enough. In conclusion, if heaven and hell do not truly exist, then the moral foundation of humans does not collapse as we often imagine. Instead, we discover something more interesting about humans. Number 1, morality does not entirely depend on threats or rewards after death. Humans have empathy, a sense of justice, and an instinct for cooperation that are formed through evolution and social life. Number 2, the concept of heaven and hell likely also functions as a social technology. It helps large societies maintain order by creating the idea that there is supervision and justice that goes beyond human law. Number 3, however, the value of goodness does not have to depend on cosmic rewards. Goodness can arise because we understand the suffering of others, because we want the world to become a little better, or because we choose to live with integrity. Number 4, precisely without the promise of heaven or the threat of hell, goodness becomes purer. It is no longer a spiritual transaction, but a conscious human choice. So the core of the new understanding is, heaven and hell may provide moral structure for civilization, but the ability to do good actually already exists within humans themselves. And from this perspective, the most important question is no longer about, is there a heaven or hell after we die? Instead, what kind of human do we choose to become while we are still alive?